Chemistry tutor from A Scorers Enrichment Center. Now today I would like to share with you on how to write the ionic equation for all chemical reactions. Now understand that there are many students who have difficulties in converting a chemical equations into the ionic equations. So I have here with me an example of this chemical reaction, which is the neutralization reaction between the sodium hydroxide and the hydrochloric acid that gives the sodium chloride salt and the water. So before we write out the ionic equations, it's very important to understand what are their state symbols, right, under room temperature and pressure. So I have the sodium hydroxide and the hydrochloric acid, both are in the aqueous state because they are acids and alkaline solutions. And what about the sodium chloride? Now, because sodium chloride is actually a soluble salt, when it is formed, it will also exist in the aqueous state. Then on the other hand, if you look at the water being a covalent molecule, will exist in the liquid state under room temperature and pressure. Okay, so in order to convert this chemical equation into an ionic equation, first of all, we have to break down those aqueous compounds into the ions, like this. So we have Na plus OH minus, and for the hydrochloric acid, it will be broken down into the H plus and the Cl minus. Alright, so with this, what about the sodium chloride? Yes, sodium chloride will also be broken down into the Na plus and Cl minus. But for water molecule, because it is a covalent molecule, it does not contain any mobile ions at all. Therefore, it will remain as H2O. Now the next step is to identify what are the spectator ions. Now why do we call them spectator ions? Because spectator ions are just there to watch the chemical reaction taking place. They do not take part in the chemical reactions. So in fact, they are not the important ions that are crucial in making the chemical reactions to happen. So we have here the Na plus ions and the Cl minus ions, which are the spectator ions. They are known as a spectator ions. Alright? So as we know that spectators are just there to watch the matches, so they don't take part in the chemical reactions, they are not involved in the chemical reactions, that's why we call them as a spectator ions. So once we have cancelled out the spectator ions, you can see that the remaining ions are the very important ions which are responsible for the chemical reaction. And hence we have the H plus and the OH minus ions to give the water molecules. And from here, we can tell that this is an acid-based neutralization reaction because the important ions such as the H plus ions that represents the acids and the OH minus ions that represents the alkaline are taking part in the chemical reactions to form water, alright, and the salt. Okay, so I hope that this short video clip can give you a very good insight on how we should write out the chemical equations in the ionic format. Okay, see you then. Bye.